Hello everybody, this is your pal Tonystyle here, and today we'll be going over Maelstrom procs, when to use them, and more importantly, how to use them. So my goal is that by the end of this video, you will know in a variety of different situations the most optimal way to use your Maelstrom procs, or in some situations, when not to use them. And I'll go over that in depth, so let's get right into it. Let's talk about the different types of ways we can use our Maelstrom procs when it comes to the enhancement champion point of view. We have three different ways that we can use them. They're going to be Healing Surge, Lightning Bolt, or Elemental Blast. Of course, you can use Chain Lightning as well, but that's more of a PvE thing. We won't be using that at all. So Healing Surge, as a general example to start things off, is best used against burst teams during their burst situations. So a Thug Cleave, Jungle Cleave, pretty much any hunter team, of course, is more bursty for the most part. Also, Rogue Mage comes to mind. Or when you'll be using it more often is against a Affliction Lock. So a rot team like that is going to be something that you're going to be using Healing Surge throughout the entirety of the match. And now Elemental Blast is going to be used only if A, their enemy team is not bursting and you don't need a heal to survive that burst, or one of your teammates. B, you're not facing a Warlock and you're starting to rot. And then in that situation, you are indeed spec'd into Elemental Blast, so that's going to be your go-to burst whenever those situations are not applicable. Now, Lightning Bolt is generally the only time I ever use that with my Maelstrom procs is when, well, of course, we aren't under heavy burst or heavy rot damage, and also we aren't spec'd into Elemental Blast. And the only time I really spec into Unleash Fury is against, sometimes against Rogue Mage teams, generally with the Paladin because those tend to have more pressure. And also against Affliction Lock teams. Pretty much against most Affliction Lock teams, I will run Unleash Fury because I tend to heal a lot more, like I said before. So against Affliction Lock teams, I don't really get many Elemental Blast off, so it's pretty much a wasted talent. Now, I'm going to get the most Lightning Bolts off against Rogue Mage teams for the most part. This is because I'm able to get those off whenever, of course, they aren't bursting. I'm going to be looking for the Lightning Bolts to get out as many as possible. Now, I want to make sure that, if at all possible, that I have unleashed my unleashed elements first, so that I can deal the most damage with my lightning bolt. Otherwise, it hits for very, very minimal damage and really isn't even worth using at that point in time. So as an example of that, you can see here that we're playing against Rogue Mage Paladin, and I've just recovered from a very, very scary burst time because I have Iron Bark fading off. However, I was able to steer my Serum Rage, but regardless, I have my 5-stack here. I am saving it for the moment to wait until I get a good situation to unleash elements. Otherwise, it's not really that big of a deal. So once my warrior gets a stun off, I have Unleash Fury still procced. And once I release that, it's going to hit for 47k, get a very big burst situation for us in return, and force the rogue to use a big defensive, otherwise he was scared he was going to die. So the only time I really use Lightning Bolt without Unleash Fury is when the 5-stack doesn't really mean much to me. So against something like a Paladin, Purging obviously isn't your best idea, so from range, your best idea is to just use Lightning Bolt. So it's going to hit for less than 10k, but if the 5-stack doesn't mean much to you, so if you're in an offensive position, so in here in this particular case the rogue's running away from me, I'm pretty confident I'm going to get a 5-stack to be able to heal if necessary if they go hard, or get another 5-stack pretty easily due to the fact that he's not going to be locking me down to get another lightning bolt if we go hard once I do have unleashed elements up. And now the same principles apply when it comes to using Elemental Blast. You want to make sure that you use it at a 5-stack so that you get the maximum amount of damage that's possible, and after using Unleash Elements. Otherwise, it's going to waste a big cooldown, which is especially important in Elemental Blast case because it's a 12-second cooldown. And the damage that it does is a little bit less than you'll find with Lightning Bolt for the most part. You'll see here it does a little over 35k, but that's with Word of Glory up, so it would have been a little over 40,000, 41, 42, something like that. Okay, so now that we've talked about uses of Maelstrom procs when it comes to Lightning Bolt and Elemental Blast, let's talk about using them towards Healing Surge. Now, generally speaking, the same kind of principle applies when it comes to using Healing Surge with the Maelstrom procs, due to the fact that you want to use it with as many procs as possible, due to the fact that it increases each one by 20%. So it's going to be obviously instant cast, faster casted, use less mana, which is also important if you're trying to spam it. But generally speaking, just getting it off instantly with a huge crit heal if possible is going to be something that's going to be really helpful for your team, as opposed to one that you're just spamming out with no procs. So that's going to be your goal, to get them as much as possible. But at the same time, if you're in a bind and you really need a heal, casting a Healing Surge with only 2 or 3 or even 1 Maelstrom proc is still definitely something that you can do, and you can even follow that up with non-Maelstrom proc heals. But that's definitely something you're really in a big bind and you definitely need it at that point in time. And the one thing you want to keep in mind is that you definitely don't want to use that too much against casters, especially mages, because you're just going to get CS'd every single time, and that will also stop you from using a lot of your other abilities as well that can help your teammates. So keeping that in mind is going to help you out tremendously when you guys get in a bind as to whether or not you can cast those 0 Maelstrom procs. So let's go over some scenarios in arena match where I use Maelstrom procs, and I'll discuss why. Now the first scenario I have for you guys is against a Holy Pally God comp, and currently I have a 5-stack heal, but I'm at a pretty high HP, but what you'll notice is that my healer is Orified, and my warrior is in a sheep, and so I'm really worried about any CC coming out, because the next CC could be deadly, because I don't have Sham Rage and a Trinket. I'm without both of those. So with that, I'm going to use this next 5-stack for a heal, because we are right now in a very defensive position, and I know the next CC chain could be the one that ends us. So now as we fast forward here, we'll see that my healer does get polyed, and so now the game is taking a turn for the worse. And our decision making when it comes to our Maelstrom procs and our heals, because obviously we aren't going to be using Elemental Blast at this point in time, is going to come into full effect. So you'll see I'm watching the mage, I want to see what he's doing, and he's casting a poly. So I'm kind of worried about him getting that CC, but at the same time it means that he obviously can't blink and CS me at the same time he's polying. But also what you'll notice here is that my warrior does get a pummel on it, so obviously he can't blink and CS me at this point in time, so I'm free to start casting some heals and see if I can regain some HP. So after finishing this last heal, I'm going to come back into the line due to the fact that my healer is out of CC, and what you'll notice here is that my warrior gets a really nice reflect on the mage's deep, and so because of this, even though I have some Maelstrom procs accumulated and I'm going to get the 5-stack here pretty soon, I'm not going to be using them for anything, because I want to make sure that while I'm in melee range, I'm using my Storm Strikes and my Lava Lashes, and then if they blink away, I'm going to use my Elemental Blast at that point in time. Or if they do get some CC by some chance without deep, I have that ready for a heal. So with that, we are able to get a block with our offensive pressure, and then we swap to the priest, and even though I'm at 50% or so, I'm going to use this next 5-stack for an Elemental Blast, because the mage is obviously in a block, he's still pretty low. My druid gets feared, but I'm going to get him out of CC, so at this point, it's really very unlikely that they're going to get a CC on my druid, and at the same time, he's probably still on DR as it is, and without deep, it's going to be very hard for him to get it. So at this point, I'm really feeling safe, and I want to be using my procs for an offensive purpose. So let's take a look at a melee cleave. So this is Feral DK, and a lot of melee cleaves are similar in the fact that, especially when they're going hard, you're going to be spamming heals back to back to back in a rapid succession. So what you'll see happen here is that the Feral is going to stun me with Incarn up. So of course, out of this, I'm going to pop a Sentence and start working towards that 5-stack as soon as possible. Once I get that, I'm going to hit Healing Surge with a very nice global, and I'm going to start abusing my Sentence range and working towards more Maelstrom procs. Now I get a 4-stack here, which is definitely not what you would prefer a 5, of course, but with a 4-stack you can definitely feel really confident that nobody's going to be able to kick it because it's way too fast of a cast. So with my next 5-stack, I take a little bit of a risk since the Feral Incarn is still up and use Elemental Blast. Now, this is something that I felt comfortable at the time, and then I kind of regretted it because you see we do take a lot of damage here, and it forces a Trinket out of me. But with my Warrior Shockwave, you're obviously going to be okay. But this goes to show you that, especially during Incarn and other big cooldowns, Killing Spree comes to mind, Adrenaline Rush from a Rogue, Recklessness from a Warrior. Generally speaking, it's never really a good thing to use Elemental Blast or Lightning Bolt during that time, due to the fact that you're going to probably regret it in a little bit, unless you guys are in a very, very commanding position. So now let's take a look at a different situation of the same match down the line. Now this is before the next Incarn comes up. Now I know Incarn's coming up really soon because my Sentence is coming up. They're both 3-minute cooldowns. So what you'll see is that they're training my Druid here, and the Druid is casting Clone. The enemy Druid, the Feral Druid, is casting Clone in my face. So because of this, I know that it's not going to be a big deal for me to cast Elemental Blast because they aren't connecting on my Druid. Every time they're connecting on my Druid or myself without Sham Rage, I'm going to be scared and think twice about LE Blast. But of course here, not a big deal. Going to throw that LE Blast out, and then we're going to continue to train. And especially due to the fact that the Feral gets a Shockwave, I'm going to use LE Blast once again. So this is 2 Elemental Blasts back to back as soon as the cooldown comes up. And with that, we do net the kill right before he gets Incarn back up. That does it for my guide for using Maelstrom weapon. Hope you guys enjoyed it and learned a few things, and I'll see you next time.